Alright, I am under the Torino right now. And here's my passenger side. You can see the header bolt studs right there. I gotta try to sneak up passenger side header. And then the driver's side header right here. So I got the car up in the air. I'm hoping I'm up high enough to get this thing hooked up. I'd like to get this passenger side on because it looks like it might be the harder one. I might have to drop the steering linkage here. I might have to drop that steering linkage just to get the header to slide up easier. So we'll see. I'm gonna grab it, see what it looks like. Alright, sorry for the camera turns, but it's difficult. But I basically got the header up in there. Header's up in there. Just needs to be bolted on. But it's in there. I don't know how much, well, you can see that. But it's up in there. Just got to bolt it up. And it looks like I might have some room to put the starter in. We'll take a look at that, but it looks like I should be all set. And I didn't have to drop this pitman arm here off the steering. So I feel real good about that. But that one's in. I'm going to work on the driver's side. Alright, I'm not sure you can see this, but this is the driver's side, and I have the whole steering box right here in the way. That is a huge piece of gear, but even after if I was to take this whole thing off, it still doesn't look like this would fit in place. So I'm gonna see by just trying to maneuver it up there, but there's no way that this thing's going up in there. Even if I was to slide it up through here and then drop it back down on top, I don't know. Let's take a look at it. So the only way that I'm seeing to get the header up through here is to remove that steering box. You can see the new power steering lines below this one. That's the steering box on there. There's 3 bolts behind this driver's side front wheel, and then you also have to take the steering knuckle off, which is kind of hidden up there. I'm going to work on taking that off. If I take that off, I believe I should be able to sneak the header up through here. The passenger side goes on without moving the engine or anything, so I'm not worried about the passenger side. It's the driver's side. So let me go ahead and start removing that. So I'm not sure if you can see, but I removed the steering box like I was talking about. So that was removed out of the way. It's pretty simple. Once I removed the pitman arm, I had to remove the fuel line retainer clips that go all the way back along the frame, just to in front of the door, basically, to allow the fuel line to go up and around. And then the 3 bolts for the steering box itself. And you can kind of see the headers in there, but it's still not all the way in. So I'm going to lift the engine up just a little bit, just so I can get the header to line up. I'm going to grab the gaskets and get this guy in place. Alright, so the steering box is out like we said. I was able to get the header in, but I had to pull all the studs out because it wouldn't even slide past the studs. I had to bang on the header here when it was off the car. I heated it up to get a dent going on the header to pass the control arm here. So I'm still having a tough time because I think I might have to pull it back out and dent it a little bit more in that same area because it's almost there. I'm going to try to use the pry bar and see if I can pull up on it to get the far back stud in. If I get the far back stud in by hand, then the rest of these should be easy. The passenger side came up without removing the studs, and I was able to get the first one on, and then with my son Nate, he helped me while I pried on it with the pry bar here. I used the pry bar, and I was able to get the rest in. We backed out some of the studs so that we can get the nuts on there. As you can see, I did use 2 or 3 different style heads, only because the studs that I bought were too fat, because it has like that built-in washer on the head like that one. So for a couple of them it was just too close to the header tube, so I used a different one. So this side is completely bolted on, tightened up with gasket. So just got to finish up on this side, on the driver's side. So I'm going to continue on that. All right, since I'm working on getting that driver's side header done, I figured I might as well finish up on the passenger side by running the starter up, the starter wire and whatnot. So when I got up underneath the car, I realized that the starter wasn't lining up at all. And then I was like, well, it's got to be adjustable. So it is. This high torque mini starter is adjustable. And it bolts on with a 5mm Allen head there and 2 Phillips heads up top. So the way I did it was I went underneath with the 3 screws off, brought the 2 Phillips heads with me to line it up. Once I got it lined with a perfect position with the mount bolts, one on top, one on the bottom here, the solenoid was out of the way. I lined it up like that, pushed the 2 screws in by hand and just hand tightened them, came back out, greased everything up, repacked the starter, and I'm getting ready to put it in now. The long tube headers I thought were going to be an issue to get the starter in, but I purposely got a mini torque starter just because of the long tube headers, and this will stay clear and it'll work out fine. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to run the ignition wire for the starter and for the actual main power wire right here. So I'm going to run the main power wire and run a new ignition wire up to the starter relay solenoid actually up on the firewall or on the fender well. So I'm going to do that right now. All right, what I'm working on today is mounting up the accessories, putting the crank pulley on, water pump pulley, and the alternator belt, and then the harness for the alternator. So this is the big block Ford alternator bracket. Comes with all the hardware, Allen bolts, stainless, and we're going to start working on that right now. But I did already mount up the crank pulley. You can see down there. I got the alternator belts just hanging on there, and then the water pump pulley is on there, but I'm not going to put the water pump bolts, the water pump pulley bolts on because it goes on with the fan, which is right here. The fan might be in my way while I'm mounting the alternator, so I'm waiting to mount up those 4 bolts in front of the water pump pulley. So let's get started. All right, so I got the bottom one mounted up to the block right here, and then the upper one, you remove 1 water pump bolt, which I did. It's right here. Remove that, and it uses the spacer in between. And I'm going to tighten that up right now, and then the bracket's going to be tightened. Just waiting for the alternator to slide in between. So I'm just going to snug this up because I want to get the harness of the back of the alternator mounted up before I tighten anything else up. Alright, so I got the alternator mounted up. I don't have the right size V-belt for it, unfortunately. Both of them that I ordered from Rock Auto are wrong, so I got to submit those for a return and try to see if I can get the right size alternator pulley and water pump pulley. I was trying to see if I can put them all in one to get the water pump going, but unfortunately I do not have the right belt. So the alternator is all wired up properly and it's mounted up. Just gonna leave it loose so that I can wait for the right V-belt for it. Alright, so I finally got the header on with some fabricating of the pipe down there, taking it off and back on again to get it to go around this upper control arm area. And then I was having a hard time putting all the studs in, and I couldn't. I was like, how could I get the studs in this little tiny space here? And I barely can get it started, and then to actually get it to tighten with the Allen wrench, it would never happen. So 1, 2, and then 3 right here. What I did was the headers came with bolts. So the headers came with these bolts. So I was able to just use the bolts that it came with on those 3. The other ones all went with the stainless Allen head studs like these here. You can see it's got like thread seal on it, but these just wouldn't fit in that tight space there. So I was lucky enough to get the studs on there, or excuse me, the bolts on there. So they're on. Both sides are completely on. I was taking a break because the headers were pissing me off, so I decided to go back and forth. So as you saw, I already put the some of the accessories on. I put the crank pulley on. The water pump pulley is just sitting on there because I was afraid of lifting the motor and having the fan hit the shroud or the radiator. So I did that. I went ahead and I mounted the starter. The starter's down underneath there. I put a new starter solenoid up here, and I got the battery in the car. I tried turning it over by key and nothing happened. So all I got was like lights inside the car, but no crank. I'm still I'm using the factory wiring harness that was in the car, so I'm hoping that everything's still good. Obviously the car's not going to start, doesn't have spark plugs in it, doesn't have the wires in it. I did throw a new rotor inside of the distributor, so I took the cap off, put a new rotor in there. I went and got some heater hose to hook up the water pump to the intake there, and I'm going to run this one back to the heater hose back that way. But for now, pretty much done. I'm happy that I wired up the alternator. That's all done. That's mounted up. Just needs the pulley, or excuse me, the belt, like I mentioned earlier. But the belts that I bought off Rock Auto were the wrong ones. I went to Advanced Auto. They didn't have it in stock. So I'm going to return the belts that I have and hope for the best on getting some new belts that actually fit this thing. I'm still going to end up replacing this factory distributor. I just couldn't find the right one to sit in place with the oil pump. So that's still a plan. What else? I got to put the steering box back in because I had to drop that steering box to put the driver's side header on. I don't know if you can see the starter down there. Let's see. Yeah, you can see it right there. So the starter's in place. It's down in there. It's a mini torque starter. I was able to get that in place. That's done. Next I'm gonna actually mount the motor mounts to the frame. I replaced the transmission mount already also. I just gotta bolt it all up to the actual frame of the car and the cross member. So for now, I think I'm done for today. Next episode, I'll see if I can get the water pump on, or excuse me, the power steering pump on, and get the right belts on, and then run antifreeze up through the engine with all the new heater hoses on. And I got the brand new upper and lower radiator hose for this thing, so I got to do that. But that's little stuff. All right, guys. Sorry this episode was a little over the place, but I was kind of upset with the way the headers weren't lining up. But I'm happy that it's in place now. Thanks for watching.